"Please don't do that," she cried. "But the rancher does the unthinkable, and he has a wife." The morning sun rose slowly over the wide-open plains of Montana, casting a golden glow over the rolling fields and the wooden fences of the Wilson Ranch. The ranch had been in the Wilson family for generations, a place where hard work and quiet strength were valued above all else. Daniel Wilson, the current owner, was a man of habit. Every morning he rose before dawn, dressed in worn jeans and a faded plaid shirt, and walked out to check on the cattle. The smell of hay and the earthy scent of the ranch filled the air, mingling with the soft sound of cattle lowing in the distance. Daniel was a tall man with strong, calloused hands that spoke of years of hard work. He had a quiet way about him, reserved, patient, and always careful with his words. People in the small town nearby respected him. He was known not only for running a successful ranch, but also for his honesty and sense of fairness. His wife, Margaret, managed the home with a gentle but firm touch. She made sure everything ran smoothly at the ranch, from preparing meals for the workers to keeping the house in order. Together, they formed a team that made the ranch a thriving place, though the work was never easy. One early spring morning, a young woman named Eliza arrived at the ranch. She was hired to help during the busy season, assisting with the cattle, cleaning the barns, and helping wherever needed. Eliza was full of energy and curiosity, a bright spark in the quiet rhythm of the ranch life. She had grown up in a small town far from Montana and had always dreamed of experiencing life on a ranch. To her, the Wilson Ranch was not just a job, it was an adventure. A place where she could learn, grow, and perhaps find a sense of freedom she had never known. From the moment she arrived, Eliza felt both excitement and nervousness. The ranch was vast, with wide fields stretching as far as the eye could see. There were horses in the stables, cattle in the pens, and rows of neatly stacked hay bales that smelled sweet and fresh. She watched Daniel closely, noticing the way he moved with precision, checking fences and gates, ensuring everything was in its place. He spoke to her politely, giving instructions about the daily chores, but there was something about him that made Eliza cautious. He seemed kind, yet there was a quiet intensity in his eyes that she could not ignore. Eliza quickly learned the routine of ranch life. She rose early each day, joining Daniel and the other workers in feeding the animals, repairing fences, and tending to the fields. The work was hard, and her muscles ached in ways they had never ached before, but she felt proud of herself for keeping up. Daniel often gave advice, showing her the proper way to handle the cattle or lift the hay bales without hurting herself. At first, their interactions were strictly professional. Eliza respected Daniel's experience and knowledge, and Daniel respected her willingness to work hard and learn. Despite the professionalism, Eliza noticed subtle moments that made her uneasy. Daniel would linger a little too long when giving instructions or offer small compliments that seemed slightly out of place. She tried to brush it off, telling herself that she was overthinking things. The ranch was isolated and she was far from home, so she focused on her work, determined not to let anything distract her. Yet there was a tension in the air she could not ignore. It was like standing in a room just before a storm. The calm felt fragile, and the wind hinted at something coming. Margaret, Daniel's wife, was a constant presence in the background. She moved gracefully through the house and grounds, her voice warm and welcoming. She offered Eliza advice on cooking and cleaning, shared stories about the ranch, and always checked in to make sure the young woman was adjusting well. Eliza admired Margaret for her strength and kindness. It was clear that Margaret and Daniel had built their life together through teamwork and trust. Watching them interact, Eliza could see a bond that had been forged over many years of shared responsibilities, mutual respect, and hard work. Life at the ranch had its rhythm. Mornings were for feeding the animals and preparing the fields. Afternoons were spent repairing fences, checking water supplies, and making sure everything was in order. Evenings were quieter, a time for meals, small conversations, and the occasional walk across the fields to enjoy the sunset. Eliza found herself falling into this rhythm, learning the importance of patience, attention to detail, and the satisfaction that came from seeing a job well done. She also noticed the beauty of the Montana landscape, the way the sky stretched endlessly above the plains, the golden light of sunset reflecting off the barns, and the quiet, soothing sounds of nature that filled the evenings. One day, while working near the cattle pens, Daniel approached Eliza with a question about her progress. He was calm, but there was a seriousness in his tone. "Eliza," he said, "you've been doing well, but there's something important I need to show you about handling the cattle. It's easy to make a mistake if you're not careful." He demonstrated the proper way to lead the cattle, showing her step by step, while Eliza followed closely. She appreciated his guidance, noting how his experience made even the hardest tasks seem manageable. Over time, Eliza began to feel a mix of admiration and caution toward Daniel. She respected his knowledge and his dedication, but she also noticed moments when he seemed to expect more attention than she felt comfortable giving. It wasn't something she could explain easily. It was a feeling that made her heart beat a little faster, and her thoughts turned cautious. She reminded herself constantly that she was there to work, not to form personal connections. She focused on her tasks, telling herself that maintaining professional distance was the best way to stay safe. Even with her caution, Eliza found moments of joy on the ranch. She laughed with other workers, learned to ride horses with confidence, and even began to understand the pride that came with taking care of animals and land. She admired Daniel's skill from a distance, the way he could sense when a fence was weak, how he knew which cattle needed attention, and the quiet way he commanded respect from everyone around him. These moments inspired her, even if she remained careful about her interactions with him. As days turned into weeks, the routine settled into something familiar. Eliza began to feel like part of the ranch family, even if she still maintained her boundaries. She was learning more than just ranch work. She was learning about trust, responsibility, and the unspoken rules of working in a close-knit environment. Every morning brought new challenges and opportunities, and every evening offered a quiet reflection on what she had accomplished. She felt a growing sense of independence, knowing that she could handle the demands of the ranch and navigate the complex social dynamics that came with it. Yet, beneath the surface of this busy, sunlit life, there was a tension that Eliza could not ignore. Small gestures, lingering looks, and words that carried an unspoken weight made her wary. She trusted her instincts, understanding that intuition was often a powerful guide, especially in situations where appearances might be deceiving. She remained alert, careful to protect herself while continuing to work diligently. The ranch was a place of beauty and opportunity, but it was also a place where boundaries had to be respected and personal strength mattered more than ever. By the end of the first month, Eliza had found her footing. She could handle the daily chores with confidence, anticipate the needs of the animals, and understand the rhythm of the ranch life. She had earned the respect of the other workers, and even gained a measure of trust from Daniel, who had begun to rely on her more for important tasks. But even with these achievements, she remained cautious, aware that the seemingly calm life of the ranch could shift in an instant. As the sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Eliza stood by the fence and watched the cattle move slowly into their pens. She took a deep breath, savoring the scent of hay and fresh earth, feeling a mixture of pride and apprehension. She was proud of how far she had come, but she could not shake the feeling that something was changing in the air, that the quiet rhythm of the ranch was about to face a challenge she could not yet see. And somewhere in the distance Daniel watched too, unaware that their story was only just beginning. Days passed on the Wilson Ranch, and spring grew stronger, turning the fields a deep, rich green. Eliza was now fully immersed in ranch life. Her mornings began with the sound of roosters crowing, and her body moved in rhythm with the chores that had once felt overwhelming. She fed the cattle, cleaned the barns, repaired fences, and learned to anticipate the needs of the ranch animals. Her muscles ached sometimes, but she welcomed the tiredness. It was a reminder that she was growing stronger, learning more than she had ever expected. Despite her focus on work, Eliza could not help but notice Daniel's attention. At first it had been subtle, lingering looks, small comments about how she handled the cattle, compliments that seemed innocent but slightly personal. Eliza had brushed them off, reminding herself to maintain professional boundaries. She had grown up understanding the importance of respect and caution, especially around people in positions of authority. Still, something in Daniel's gaze made her heart race, a mix of admiration for his skill and unease at the intensity she felt in his eyes. One warm afternoon, Daniel approached her while she was stacking hay bales in the barn. He had a serious expression, and his voice carried a tone of urgency. "Eliza, I need you to help me move the new calves into the larger pen," he said. She nodded, wiping her hands on her jeans, and followed him. The barn was quiet, except for the soft sound of the calves bleating and the occasional clatter of tools. As they worked together, Daniel moved close to demonstrate how to guide a calf properly. His hands were firm, steady, and skilled. Eliza tried to focus on the task, but she felt a rising tension, a sense that the closeness was more than necessary. "Please don't do that," she said softly, when he placed a guiding hand too near her arm. Her words were calm but firm, a boundary she needed to set. Daniel paused, his expression unreadable. He nodded slightly and moved back, but Eliza could feel the weight of his gaze even from a small distance. She reminded herself to stay alert, to maintain professionalism, and to keep her mind on the work. After the incident, Eliza's thoughts were restless. She worked with extra care, keeping her distance whenever possible. But she also knew that the ranch was small, and there were only so many tasks she could complete alone. She could not avoid Daniel entirely. His presence was constant, overseeing the operations, ensuring that everything ran smoothly. The tension in the air made her cautious, but it also forced her to be observant, noticing every detail of her surroundings and every subtle change in behavior. Meanwhile, Daniel tried to maintain a professional front. He continued to give instructions and guidance, but there were moments when his concern for Eliza seemed to blur the line between mentorship and something more personal. It was a conflict he did not fully understand, a battle between his responsibilities as a rancher, his commitment to his wife, and the unexpected feelings he was experiencing. He tried to remind himself of the importance of boundaries, but the isolation and long hours on the ranch sometimes made his judgment falter. Eliza confided in one of the older ranch workers, a kind woman named Sarah, who had worked at the Wilson Ranch for many years. Sarah noticed the tension between Eliza and Daniel and offered gentle advice. "The ranch can be a strange place sometimes," she said, handing Eliza a bottle of water. "People get used to working close together, and sometimes lines get blurry. Always trust your instincts and never hesitate to speak up if something doesn't feel right." Eliza nodded, feeling grateful for the guidance. She realized that she was not alone and that having someone to talk to gave her strength and clarity. As the days passed, small events began to highlight the growing tension. Daniel would call Eliza over to help with delicate tasks, often lingering longer than necessary. Offering compliments or asking personal questions, Eliza remained polite but firm. always redirecting the conversation back to work. She found herself thinking more carefully about how to navigate the ranch environment, learning the delicate balance of respect, caution, and independence. Margaret, Daniel's wife, continued to manage the home and the daily operations with calm efficiency. She was warm and welcoming to Eliza, often sharing stories about the ranch and the family history. Eliza admired Margaret's strength and grace, noticing how she seemed to command respect without raising her voice. Watching Margaret and Daniel together, Eliza could see the bond they shared, a partnership built on years of shared work, trust, and mutual care. This observation reminded Eliza of the importance of maintaining boundaries and professionalism, reinforcing her determination to keep the situation under control. One afternoon, while checking fences along the northern pasture, Eliza encountered Daniel again. He asked her to help with a broken gate that needed immediate repair. They worked side by side under the bright sun, their hands occasionally brushing as they passed tools and adjusted posts. The physical closeness was necessary for the work, but it also reminded Eliza of the importance of setting boundaries. She focused on her movements, deliberately keeping a professional distance and directing her attention solely to the task at hand. Despite her caution, moments of unease continued. Daniel would sometimes offer extra help or linger near her under the guise of teaching or guiding her. Each time, Eliza reminded herself of the importance of her instincts and the need to remain vigilant. She also noticed a change in Daniel's demeanor. He seemed conflicted, sometimes apologetic in subtle ways, other times distracted or distant. It was clear that the incident in the barn had affected both of them, creating a tension that neither could fully express. Eliza also found herself reflecting on her own feelings. She admired Daniel's skill and dedication, but she was determined not to let admiration cross into discomfort or compromise. She focused on her goals, learning, working hard, and maintaining her independence. She reminded herself daily that her safety and comfort were paramount and that her voice mattered. The experience taught her resilience, patience, and the importance of standing firm even in difficult situations. The tension reached a quiet peak one evening as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the fields. Eliza was repairing a section of fence when Daniel approached carrying tools for the task. He spoke to her calmly, explaining what needed to be done. As they worked together, the silence was heavy, each aware of the earlier incident and the unspoken awareness between them. They completed the repair efficiently, yet the moment lingered in Eliza's mind, a reminder that boundaries must be respected at all times. Later that evening, Eliza found comfort in talking to Margaret while helping with dinner preparations. Margaret was kind and attentive, asking about her day and offering advice about life on the ranch. Eliza felt a sense of safety in Margaret's presence, a reminder that she was supported and not alone. She realized the importance of community and trust and the value of having someone to confide in during challenging times. Life on the ranch continued with its daily rhythm, blending work, learning, and quiet reflection. Eliza grew stronger, more confident, and more aware of the subtle dynamics that shaped her environment. She learned to navigate the challenges of close quarters, long hours, and intense work while maintaining her boundaries. The experience deepened her understanding of resilience, courage, and the importance of trusting her instincts. Even as the work remained demanding, Eliza found moments of joy and satisfaction. She laughed with other workers, observed the natural beauty of the Montana landscape, and appreciated the quiet pride that came from completing her tasks well. The ranch had become a place of learning, growth, and self-discovery, a place where she could test her limits and find her strength. Yet, despite these positive moments, the earlier incident in the barn remained in her thoughts. It was a reminder of the need for vigilance, the importance of speaking up, and the reality that not all situations were simple or easy to navigate. Eliza knew that she would need to remain strong, careful, and thoughtful in the days to come. She also knew that her experience on the ranch was shaping her in ways she had never anticipated, teaching lessons about courage, responsibility, and the value of maintaining integrity even under pressure. By the end of part 2, Eliza had become more confident in her abilities, aware of the subtle tension with Daniel, and determined to maintain her independence and safety. The ranch life had tested her in many ways, but she had learned to navigate its challenges with grace, intelligence, and resilience. The story of her time at the Wilson Ranch was only beginning, and she understood that the choices she made, the boundaries she set, and the trust she cultivated would shape the rest of her journey in ways she could not yet predict. Spring slowly gave way to early summer on the Wilson Ranch. The days grew longer, the sunlight warmer, and the work never-ending. The ranch was a hive of activity as the cattle grew heavier. The fields required constant attention, and the maintenance of barns and fences demanded every worker's focus. Eliza had grown accustomed to the rhythm of ranch life. She moved through her tasks with confidence, her muscles strong, her mind sharp, and her instincts alert. But with every passing day, she felt an undercurrent of tension that refused to fade, a tension that involved Daniel, though she wished she could ignore it. One bright morning, Daniel asked Eliza to help with a project on the far side of the ranch, a section of fencing that had been damaged by a recent storm. The work required close cooperation, and Daniel moved beside her as they carried posts and hammered stakes into the ground. Eliza focused on the task, keeping her movements deliberate and her mind occupied. But she noticed the way Daniel's eyes lingered longer than necessary, a mixture of intensity and thoughtfulness that made her uneasy. She reminded herself to remain calm and professional, refusing to let her discomfort interfere with her work. As they worked, Daniel began talking about the history of the ranch, the family traditions, and the challenges he had faced over the years. His tone was friendly, almost conversational, and yet Eliza sensed a subtle shift beneath the surface. There was an unspoken weight in his words, a tension that made her heart beat faster. She tried to focus on the hammering, the alignment of the posts, and the sound of the wind through the trees. But the awareness of Daniel's attention lingered, a quiet pressure she could not ignore. Later that day, during a break by the creek that ran along the edge of the ranch, Daniel offered Eliza some water and a light snack. They sat on a fallen log, the sunlight sparkling on the water, while the cattle grazed nearby. Daniel spoke of his childhood, his early days learning to work the ranch from his father, and the lessons he had learned about responsibility and integrity. Eliza listened attentively, impressed by his knowledge and the depth of his experience. But she also felt the familiar tension creeping in, a reminder of the incident in the barn that had left her cautious. "Daniel," she said carefully, "I appreciate your guidance, but I think I can manage some of the tasks on my own now." Her voice was polite but firm, establishing boundaries. Daniel paused, looking at her with an expression that was hard to read. He nodded slowly, as if acknowledging her words, but there was a subtle hesitation in his movements. It was clear that he respected her determination and growing independence, yet he also seemed uncertain about how to respond to the boundaries she had set. That evening, as Eliza prepared to finish the day's work, she noticed a change in the atmosphere around the ranch. The workers moved with efficiency, the animals settled into their pens, and the sun dipped low over the fields, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. But the quiet tension between her and Daniel seemed to grow stronger. She reflected on her interactions with him and realized that his attention, while often framed as guidance, was sometimes crossing into discomfort. She reminded herself that it was important to trust her instincts and remain vigilant, no matter how professional or kind Daniel appeared to be. The following week, a new challenge arose on the ranch. A section of fencing that had been previously repaired was damaged again, this time more severely. Daniel asked Eliza to help him with the repair immediately, emphasizing the importance of protecting the cattle. As they worked together, the physical closeness required for the task intensified the tension. Eliza could feel Daniel's presence acutely, each movement deliberate, each glance measured. She reminded herself to focus entirely on the work and not let the discomfort distract her. During the repair, a sudden gust of wind knocked a pile of tools over, sending a hammer rolling near Eliza's feet. She bent quickly to pick it up, and Daniel's hand brushed hers as he helped guide her away from the scattered tools. "Please be careful," she said softly, her tone firm yet calm. Daniel froze for a moment, a flash of guilt passing across his face. He nodded, moving slightly away, his hands now clearly focused on the tools rather than her. The moment passed, but the memory lingered, a subtle reminder of the delicate balance they had to maintain. That evening, Eliza confided in Sarah again, the older worker who had become a trusted mentor. "I feel like he's testing boundaries," she admitted quietly as they sorted feed in the barn. "He's not rude or aggressive, but there's something in the way he watches me, something I don't like." Sarah listened carefully, nodding with understanding. "It's good that you notice it," she said gently. "Pay attention to your instincts and don't hesitate to speak up or remove yourself if anything feels off. You're doing the right thing by staying alert." Meanwhile, Daniel struggled internally. He prided himself on being responsible, on being a man of honor, and yet he felt an inexplicable pull toward Eliza. He questioned himself constantly, wondering if he was reading the situation wrong, if his actions were innocent guidance or crossing the line. The conflict gnawed at him, creating tension that he could neither ignore nor resolve easily. He respected his wife Margaret and loved his family, but he also found himself wrestling with emotions he could not fully explain. The turning point came unexpectedly one afternoon. A sudden accident occurred while they were working near the northern fields. A calf had escaped through a gap in the fence, and the animals began to scatter. Daniel and Eliza moved quickly to contain them. The work was urgent, requiring precision, focus, and cooperation. In the chaos, Daniel came too close while trying to guide a cow, and Eliza instinctively stepped back, her heart racing. "Please don't do that," she said again, her voice louder this time, filled with both authority and fear. Daniel paused, his face tense with the realization that he had crossed a line once more. The incident highlighted the seriousness of the situation, forcing both of them to confront the reality of their interactions. After the immediate danger had passed, the two stood apart, catching their breath, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily between them. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his hat, a rare display of vulnerability. Eliza felt a mixture of relief that the animals were safe and apprehension about the tension that remained. She realized that the situation could escalate if boundaries were not respected, and she resolved to maintain clarity in her interactions, no matter how difficult it might become. That evening, Margaret noticed a subtle change in Daniel's behavior. He was quieter than usual, his movements slower, his tone more cautious. She watched him with concern, sensing that something was troubling him. Margaret had always been perceptive, able to read the emotions and intentions of those around her. She did not yet know the details of the tension between Daniel and Eliza, but she recognized that her husband's demeanor was different, and it left her curious and slightly uneasy. Eliza, too, reflected on the day's events. She realized that her instincts had protected her from a potentially dangerous situation, and that her boundaries were essential for maintaining her safety and dignity. That she felt a renewed sense of confidence, understanding that she had the strength to navigate difficult circumstances, even in the challenging environment of the ranch. Her awareness and courage became her guide, allowing her to continue her work with focus, intelligence, and determination. As the week progressed, life on the ranch continued in its demanding rhythm. The cattle were fed, the fences repaired, and the fields maintained. Eliza continued to grow stronger and more confident, learning to balance her independence with the cooperative work required on the ranch. Daniel, meanwhile, grappled with his emotions, aware that his behavior needed careful control and reflection. The tension between them remained, subtle but undeniable, a reminder of the delicate nature of human relationships and the importance of boundaries, respect, and self-awareness. By the end of part 3, the turning point had fully arrived. The escaped calf incident, combined with the earlier moments of tension, forced both Eliza and Daniel to confront the reality of their interactions. Eliza understood the necessity of vigilance and clear boundaries, while Daniel grappled with his feelings and the consequences of his actions. The ranch, with its wide fields and endless tasks, remained a place of opportunity and growth, but it had also become a setting where personal choices and emotional awareness were more critical than ever. The story at this stage was no longer just about ranch work or daily routine. It was about integrity, self-respect, and the complex nature of human relationships. Eliza's courage and determination were emerging as central themes, while Daniel's internal conflict added depth and tension. Margaret's quiet presence and perceptiveness hinted at the potential for resolution, understanding, or confrontation in the days to come. The narrative set the stage for the emotional climax that would soon follow, making the reader aware that the story's most intense moments were approaching. The early summer air on the Wilson Ranch was warm and heavy with the scent of hay and fresh grass. The ranch had settled into its usual rhythm, feeding, herding, repairing fences, but beneath the calm, tension was rising like an invisible storm. After the recent calf incident, the quiet unease between Eliza and Daniel had grown stronger. Each day brought small gestures, lingering glances, and subtle words that kept both of them on edge. Eliza was cautious, Daniel was conflicted, and the weight of the unspoken hung heavily over the ranch. One afternoon, Daniel asked Eliza to accompany him to the northern pasture. A section of fencing had been weakened again, and it needed immediate attention. The work required both precision and physical effort. Eliza knew that this task would put them in close proximity for hours, and a sense of nervousness settled in her chest. She reminded herself to stay focused, to keep her boundaries clear, and to rely on the instincts that had kept her safe so far. As they worked, Daniel spoke calmly, explaining the repairs step by step. His tone was neutral, professional, yet there was an intensity in his gaze that made Eliza uncomfortable. She could sense his struggle, the conflict between his responsibilities, his emotions, and his awareness of boundaries. Each movement he made was deliberate, and each word he spoke seemed weighted with unspoken tension. Eliza kept her focus on the hammer, the fence, and the alignment of the posts, but her mind was alert, aware of every subtle shift in his demeanor. Suddenly, a loose plank fell from the fence, and Daniel instinctively stepped forward to catch it. In the process, he came too close to Eliza, and she felt the same surge of discomfort she had felt during the barn incident. "Please don't do that," she said firmly, her voice steady but carrying authority. Daniel froze, his eyes widening slightly in realization. He took a step back, his hands shaking slightly as he adjusted the plank. The moment was brief, but its impact lingered, creating a tension that was impossible to ignore. Eliza's heart raced, but she held herself composed. She reminded herself that she was capable, strong, and prepared to handle the situation. Her voice, clear and firm, was a shield that protected her boundaries and reinforced her independence. She continued working, focusing on the task at hand, while Daniel struggled silently, caught between his emotions and the knowledge of right and wrong. After the repair was complete, they walked toward the barn, the long shadows of the late afternoon stretching across the fields. Daniel was quiet, his usual confidence tempered by the weight of his thoughts. Eliza sensed his inner turmoil but maintained her own composure. She had learned that observing without reacting hastily was sometimes the wisest course of action. The silence between them was filled with unspoken words, tension, and the awareness that boundaries had been tested and reaffirmed. That evening, Margaret noticed the change in the ranch's atmosphere. Daniel returned from the fields unusually quiet, and Eliza moved with careful attention to her tasks, her expression thoughtful and alert. Margaret, perceptive and kind, sensed that something significant had occurred. She did not yet know the details, but she understood that both Eliza and Daniel were carrying an emotional weight that needed acknowledgement. Her presence brought a sense of calm and stability, reminding both of them that clarity, honesty, and communication were essential. Later, while preparing dinner, Margaret spoke with Daniel privately. "You've been distant today," she said gently, placing a hand on his arm. "Is everything all right?" Daniel hesitated, struggling to find the right words. He knew that honesty was necessary, yet he also feared revealing too much. After a pause, he admitted, "There have been moments with Eliza, situations I didn't handle perfectly. I've tried to stay professional, but it's been challenging." Margaret listened carefully, her expression a mix of concern and understanding.
"You have to remember who you are," she said softly.
"Your actions affect more than just you. Keep boundaries clear and trust yourself to do what's right." Meanwhile, Eliza found herself reflecting on the day's events. She knew that she had acted with courage and clarity, asserting her boundaries firmly and calmly. She realized that her instincts had guided her successfully, and that her independence and awareness were her greatest strengths. She also understood that the ranch environment, with its close quarters and demanding work, required careful observation and thoughtful decision-making. Her experience had strengthened her resilience, teaching her lessons about courage, self-respect, and the importance of trusting her judgment. The next morning, Daniel approached Eliza before the day's work began. He spoke in a calm, measured tone, acknowledging the earlier incidents and expressing his determination to maintain professionalism. "Eliza, I want to apologize if I've made you uncomfortable," he said. "I respect you and your work, and I want to make sure we keep everything proper." Eliza nodded, appreciating his acknowledgement but remaining alert. She knew that words alone were not enough. Actions had to match intentions. Together they agreed to focus strictly on the work and keep their interactions professional, understanding that the safety of boundaries was essential for everyone involved. As the days passed, both Daniel and Eliza became more mindful of their conduct. The tension, while still present, was tempered by awareness, respect, and careful communication. Eliza focused on her tasks with renewed energy, handling the cattle, maintaining the fences, and learning new aspects of ranch life with skill and confidence. Daniel, in turn, kept a careful watch over his own behavior, ensuring that professionalism guided his actions at all times. The lessons of the previous days had strengthened both of them, reinforcing the importance of self-awareness, integrity, and respect in every interaction. However, the emotional peak of the story arrived unexpectedly one evening during a sudden storm. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and rain began to fall in heavy sheets. A section of fencing had been weakened by the wind, and the cattle were at risk of escaping. Daniel and Eliza rushed to the site, working together in the pouring rain, their movements urgent and coordinated. The storm intensified the physical demands of the work, requiring precision, strength, and clear communication. In the chaos, the earlier tensions resurfaced, but this time they were tempered by mutual respect and professionalism. Eliza worked carefully, directing the cattle and reinforcing the fence. Daniel stayed close, guiding her movements and assisting with the heavy posts. The storm made every step difficult, but the crisis also clarified priorities: the safety of the animals, the completion of the work, and the maintenance of boundaries. In the end, the fence was secured, the cattle were safe, and the storm began to subside. Both were soaked, tired, and exhilarated by the experience. The intensity of the moment had forced them to work together with complete focus and mutual respect, reinforcing the lessons they had learned about professionalism and boundaries. After the storm, the ranch workers gathered in the barn to dry off and warm up. The atmosphere was tense but relieved, filled with quiet conversations and laughter as they recounted the challenges of the day. Eliza sat quietly, reflecting on the events, proud of her ability to stay composed and effective under pressure. She had faced a demanding situation and had emerged confident, resilient, and aware of her own strength. Daniel, too, recognized the importance of maintaining clear boundaries and the value of observing his actions carefully. The emotional peak of their interactions had passed, leaving both with a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. That night, as the storm cleared and the moon rose over the ranch, Eliza stood outside, listening to the soft sounds of the fields. The cattle were calm, the wind had softened, and the world seemed peaceful again. She felt a sense of accomplishment, not just for completing the day's work, but for navigating the complexities of human interaction with courage and clarity. She understood that life on the ranch was about more than chores and animals. It was about observation, judgment, and the courage to stand firm in challenging situations. Meanwhile, Daniel sat quietly in the farmhouse reflecting on the events of the past weeks. He understood the lessons of self-control, respect, and professional conduct more clearly than ever. The storm had forced him to confront his own behavior and prioritize responsibility, integrity, and respect over personal impulses. He also realized the importance of communication, honesty, and the support of his wife, Margaret, whose guidance had been invaluable. By the end of Part 4, the emotional climax had fully unfolded. Eliza had faced fear, tension, and uncertainty with courage and intelligence, asserting her independence and maintaining her boundaries. Daniel had confronted his own conflicts, learning the importance of professionalism, self-control, and respect. The storm, both literal and metaphorical, had brought clarity to the situation, emphasizing the need for trust, responsibility, and awareness in all interactions. The story at this point had reached its most intense emotional point. The tension that had built over weeks of subtle gestures, close encounters, and internal conflicts had been addressed, leaving the characters changed and stronger. Eliza's courage and wisdom shone as central themes, while Daniel's self-awareness and commitment to change demonstrated the value of reflection and growth. Margaret's quiet presence underscored the importance of guidance, trust, and stability in times of challenge. The stage was now set for the resolution, where the lessons learned and the changes made would be fully realized, and the characters would find their path forward. The days after the storm brought a calm that felt almost unusual on the Wilson Ranch. The air was fresher, the sky clearer, and even the cattle seemed more peaceful as they grazed in the bright sunlight. Life returned to its rhythm, but there was a sense that something had shifted beneath the surface. Eliza moved through her work with steady hands and a clear mind, confident in her abilities and alert to the dynamics around her. The tension that had marked the past weeks was still present, but it had changed, tempered by understanding, awareness, and the lessons learned from the recent challenges. Daniel approached the morning chores with a new sense of focus. He remained a respected presence on the ranch, skilled and authoritative, but there was a quietness to his demeanor now, a mindfulness in his movements. He had reflected deeply on his actions and emotions, realizing the importance of boundaries, professionalism, and respect. He understood that maintaining these qualities was essential not only for the smooth running of the ranch, but also for the well-being of everyone involved. His awareness guided him, and he made a conscious effort to ensure that every interaction with Eliza remained strictly professional. Eliza noticed the change immediately. Daniel's attention remained, but it was now focused on guidance, teaching, and the efficiency of the ranch work, rather than anything personal or unnecessary. She appreciated the effort and responded with the same professionalism, creating a relationship built on mutual respect rather than tension. Her confidence grew with each passing day as she realized that her instincts, courage, and clear boundaries had made a difference. She felt proud of herself, not just for completing difficult tasks, but for handling complex human interactions with intelligence and calm. Margaret, ever perceptive, noticed the change as well. She observed her husband's renewed focus and the way Eliza carried herself with confidence. Margaret valued honesty, trust, and communication, and she recognized that these qualities were being reinforced in subtle but meaningful ways. One evening, while the three of them were gathered in the farmhouse after a long day of work, Margaret spoke to both Daniel and Eliza. "I can see that everyone has learned something important," she said warmly. "Respect, awareness, and understanding are what keep this ranch strong. Not just the work itself, but how we treat each other." Her words served as a gentle acknowledgement of the growth that had occurred, a reminder that lessons learned in challenging moments could strengthen both character and relationships. In the days that followed, the ranch flourished in ways that went beyond the obvious improvements in the fields and barns. Eliza's confidence in handling the cattle and managing tasks independently grew stronger. She had become an integral part of the ranch operations, trusted by Daniel and respected by the other workers. More importantly, she had discovered a resilience within herself, an inner strength that allowed her to face challenges with courage, clarity, and calm. Every task she completed, every decision she made, reinforced her sense of self and her ability to navigate the complexities of life on the ranch. Daniel, too, experienced personal growth. The incidents of the past weeks had forced him to confront his emotions, reflect on his actions, and prioritize professionalism above personal impulses. He learned to value boundaries, recognize the importance of clear communication, and appreciate the courage it took for Eliza to assert herself. These realizations strengthened him as a leader, a husband, and a person. He continued to manage the ranch with skill and dedication, but he now did so with a heightened awareness of the human dynamics around him, ensuring that respect and integrity guided every decision. One afternoon, as the summer sun cast long shadows across the fields, Eliza and Daniel worked together to repair a small section of fencing near the creek. The work was straightforward, and both moved with ease and familiarity. There were no lingering glances, no unnecessary comments, only the shared purpose of completing the task efficiently and safely. The atmosphere was calm and professional, a stark contrast to the tension that had once marked their interactions. Eliza felt a quiet satisfaction in the way they worked together, knowing that respect and boundaries had replaced uncertainty and discomfort. After the work was done, Eliza took a moment to stand by the creek, watching the water flow over smooth stones. She reflected on everything that had happened since her arrival: the excitement of the new job, the challenges of learning ranch work, the moments of discomfort, and the tension that had tested her patience and courage. She realized how much she had grown in both skill and character, Her confidence, independence, and ability to navigate difficult situations had strengthened, and she felt proud of herself for maintaining her principles and boundaries throughout. Daniel approached quietly, carrying a bucket of tools. He paused beside her, nodding toward the creek. "You've done well," he said simply, his tone respectful and calm. Eliza nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without letting it affect her composure. There was no lingering tension, only mutual recognition of effort and shared purpose. In that moment, the balance between them felt right: professional, respectful, and steady. Margaret joined them shortly after, bringing cold lemonade for the two workers. Her presence was warm and reassuring, a reminder that family, guidance, and community were central to life on the ranch. She smiled at Eliza and Daniel, her eyes reflecting pride and understanding. "I think we've all learned a lot this summer," she said softly, "about work, about each other, and about what it means to respect the people around us." Her words resonated deeply with both Daniel and Eliza, reinforcing the lessons of patience, courage, and integrity that had guided their journey. Over the next few weeks, the ranch settled into a productive and peaceful routine. The cattle were cared for, the fields were maintained, and the barns were orderly. Eliza continued to excel in her work, her confidence growing with each day. She developed strong relationships with the other workers, who respected her for her skill, determination, and clear boundaries. Daniel continued to lead with integrity and awareness, balancing the demands of the ranch with his commitment to professionalism and respect. Margaret's presence provided stability, guidance, and support, ensuring that the environment remained safe, welcoming, and structured. As summer progressed, Eliza had moments to reflect on the lessons she had learned. She realized that courage was not just about facing physical challenges. It was about standing firm in her principles, trusting her instincts, and asserting her boundaries when necessary. She understood that integrity was essential, not only in her work but in every interaction, and she recognized that strength could coexist with kindness, confidence with humility, and independence with collaboration. These lessons, learned in the unique environment of the ranch, had become part of her character, shaping her for the future. Daniel, too, reflected on his growth. He recognized that responsibility extended beyond managing a ranch. It included the responsibility to respect others, maintain clear boundaries, and act with integrity even in difficult situations. He learned that leadership was not just about skill and authority, but also about empathy, awareness, and communication. The experiences with Eliza had tested him, challenged him, and ultimately strengthened him as a person, husband, and leader. By the end of the summer, the ranch thrived not only in productivity but also in harmony. The tension that had once overshadowed the work had been replaced by a clear sense of respect, professionalism, and trust. Eliza had proven herself as a skilled, independent, and courageous worker. Daniel had demonstrated self-awareness, integrity, and commitment to boundaries. Margaret's wisdom and guidance had helped maintain stability and perspective throughout the challenges. Together, they created an environment where respect, diligence, and collaboration flourished. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Eliza stood at the edge of the pasture, watching the cattle move slowly into their pens. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, the air warm and calm. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that she had grown in strength, confidence, and awareness. She had faced challenges, navigated tension, and maintained her principles, emerging stronger and more capable. Daniel joined her, standing at a respectful distance. He nodded toward the horizon, acknowledging the work that had been done, the lessons learned, and the growth achieved. There was no tension between them now, only mutual respect and a shared understanding of the boundaries that had been maintained. The storm had passed, both literally and metaphorically, leaving clarity, calm, and a sense of accomplishment. Margaret came to join them, her presence warm and reassuring. Together, the three stood in silence for a moment, appreciating the beauty of the ranch, the work they had accomplished, and the lessons they had learned. It was a moment of reflection, of recognition, and of quiet pride. They had faced challenges, navigated tension, and emerged stronger, with respect and integrity guiding their relationships and work. By the conclusion of the summer, Eliza knew that her experience at the Wilson Ranch had changed her in profound ways. She had learned the value of courage, boundaries, and self-respect. She had grown in skill, confidence, and understanding. And she had discovered that resilience and wisdom often emerge from the most challenging situations, guiding a person toward strength, independence, and clarity. Daniel, too, understood the significance of the summer's events. He had learned to navigate complex emotions, prioritize respect and professionalism, and act with integrity. The lessons of self-awareness, responsibility, and boundaries would remain with him, shaping his approach to the ranch, his family, and his relationships. As the summer drew to a close, the Wilson Ranch continued to flourish, both as a place of work and as a place of growth, learning, and respect. Eliza had proven her strength, Daniel had demonstrated self-awareness, and Margaret had provided guidance and stability. Together, they had navigated challenges, faced tension, and emerged with clarity, understanding, and mutual respect. The lessons learned would remain with them, shaping their actions, decisions, and relationships for years to come. And so, the story concluded not with dramatic confrontation or unresolved conflict, but with reflection, growth, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that courage, integrity, and respect had prevailed. The ranch thrived, the characters had grown, and the bonds of professionalism, trust, and awareness remained intact, ensuring that the lessons of the summer would continue to guide them into the future.